Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming here this afternoon on short notice because this event was planned at just every 2 days. And so we really have to thank Dr. Roger Hosein for accepting our short notice invitation to be here. And we thought, just like himself, this is a very important event, and what we're going to talk about here today. And it concerns your life, your future, your welfare, your business, as well as mine. So, once again, thank you for coming. We extend welcome to the media for again coming here at short notice. And first, let me say thanks to Patrick Theatre for a wonderful lunch. It's very good. With that, we have in our list also with Dr. Hosein, we have Commander Gavin here, former head of NOC and security expert. You see him in the media many times. We have with us today Mr. Bala Maharaj. He is the Vice President of the Tribunal Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Welcome, Bala. You can raise your hand so everybody can see you. And it's only there with it. We have some of our friends from San Fernando with us. And other members of the media and business community, welcome one and all. I want to introduce Mr. Trevor Joseph to come and give some opening remarks, and then we will proceed with the event.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Here is what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to welcome everybody. So that is a second welcome to all of you. I will save the time of calling everybody's name, but especially I want to thank Professor Dr. Roger Hosein. When I called him, I heard the excitement in his voice. So he was very excited to do this. I think he was more excited than me to get this program going, because I think he recognizes that the importance of it and the significance of it as it relates to our economy. So I'm really looking forward to what he has to say, and hopefully you take your notes and you can bombard it with a lot of questions. When we have one of his statue in our midst, let's take the best use of it. And we all have our challenges in business, so don't be afraid to ask him, put him in the spot. I think he can handle himself very well. So again, welcome and thanks to the passenger agent again for our wonderful meets. Thanks again.
I will tell you, Dr. Joseph is our national president and the regional vice president for Full Gospel Business Fellowship International. And a very vibrant and hardworking president at that. So I just want to invite Mr. Gavin here, who will bring some opening remarks for us. So please welcome Gavin.
Thank you very much, Chair. A very good evening to everybody again. Dr. Hosein and the executive of the Full Gospel Businessmen Fellowship, to the media, and friends and family. And again to the executive of the Passage to Asia. Now, when we had the conversation as this was going to take place, both Mr. Chairman and myself had a discussion regarding the concept of security. I won't be too long, because the floor is ready, Dr. Hosein's floor this evening, but it was important that we came to the concept and the understanding that possibly, I'm here to say possibly, the what if. What if this situation continues as it is, and we are faced with what is known as a dwindling economy in a not so bright or promising future, with a blurred sort of horizon? What are the concepts of understanding that we have to face regarding security? And is security going to be a bigger threat than it is presently? Or are we going to have measures and contingencies in place to deal with it? it is very important as we look at the economy. We're going to hear a lot of information this evening from Dr. Hosein. You're going to see what are some of the implications, You're going to hear what the IMF is doing and the projections and all of that. And as we sit as businessmen and women making decisions, that backdrop of security has to be very important. So security measures have to be considered. And security measures are meant to increase what is known as the level of security, the thinking of security, that is a deterrence to crime and to criminality. But it is how is this going to impact us and our business places? And therefore, there are costs involved when we look at that. And some people have made security a business, but there are costs involved to us, the law-abiding citizens. And we want to talk about that a little bit, and that is known as the cost of mitigation. These costs contain, for instance, direct investments in equipment, training and operational costs, private agents and companies, developers and the public authorities, exacting economic costs, the cost of mitigation. And secondly, the mitigation effort, we must understand as business people, generate various types of secondary effects on the socio-economic platforms, the socio-economic territory of Trinidad and Tobago. And the most cost-effective security prevention strategies, it just not taking impact on crime or criminality. It has an account on its people. And therefore, we have to understand that because we as business people will be depending on the people and society and communities to generate that income-earning transactions, if you want to call it that, or that turnover. And when you have a people being affected by security that is affected by a dwindling economy, therein lies the issue. So a platform like what is represented here today, present and the extended platform of business people, very soon will start engaging and employing its own private security. And I say this without reservation. And I'm not talking about contracting a security firm to do a man-by-the-door type of guardship duties for us. We're talking about we having to provide a protection for our businesses, for our people, for our staff, for our families, from a private security coverage. It is something that we saw that came about in Latin America and Central America, where business places, groups like we have here, had to employ the protection of private security because a dwindling economy led to increased crime and criminality and crime rate. So that is the issue. I will just briefly mention that another time, at another invitation, we will go into more details of what is known as the 5 R's of concern regarding a dwindling economy and security. And they are risk, resilience, response, restore, and recovery. The 5 R's for security consideration in a dwindling economy are risk, resilience, response, restore, and recovery. What are the issues that are facing us? And we are probably living it as we speak. Conversations with some of our colleagues at the lunch table indicated that there are challenges with the forex challenges, foreign exchange, a lack of proper public awareness, where things are happening in the administrative domain, things are happening in the decision-making domain, things are happening in political domain, but there's a lack of public awareness. The issue is there stability or lack of stability? This will lead to concern, for instance, for our security and the emergence of something known as the underground economy. This is really that. The underground economy. This is not a hole in the wall of some store that is telling you when it's supposed to be closed in a back door or something like that. This is the underground economy that comes up parallel to the mainstream economy. And therefore, the emergence and the rise of transnational organized crime takes its course. And these are some of the things we will have to consider as we move into recognizing the concept of security in a dwindling economy. Last but not least, we can't leave out the elephant in the room. That's COVID-19. And therefore, I will continue to advocate in treating with some of the issues that Dr. Hosein is going to be speaking about, the necessity, the intention, the mandatory move now that we should really be seeing at the level of our decision making is the establishment of a COVID-19 task force. I have been saying it, this is not a Ministry of Health issue tax. This is a whole of government, interagency, inter-collaborative framework that is involving a task force which would lead to the establishment of a COVID-19 crisis management center, where you can have people speaking directly to issues of foreign affairs, people speaking directly to national security, people speaking directly to the issues of agriculture and to investments, and most important, as is the central discussion figure here this evening, the Ministry of Finance. So therefore, I am strongly continuing to advocate for a COVID-19 task force and a COVID-19 crisis management center that is intergovernmental. Are we feeling secure and safe is the question. Going into this new season, is there an assurance and a promise of a feel-safe concept? Are we seeing a trust to advance, for instance, the blue economy, which we will hear a little more about from Dr. Hosein, in the aspect of not agriculture? In this room, we don't see the blue economy as for agriculture, we see the blue economy with a focus on food security, another concept of homeland security. In closing, it is very, very important that we as business people, we as law-abiding investors into Trinidad and Tobago, begin paying attention to the possibilities of a dwindling economic failure, a dwindling economic issue, projections that are not promising, begin focusing on security as an integral part of our decision-making and future investments. My advice out to special forces in the military is self-preservation, your first line of defense. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor. With that, I just want to continue where Governor left off here. We have seen over the last few years a continued fall in economic activity in this country. We have seen businesses floundering and in 2021 fighting for survival. We have seen every company, every importer fighting for a share of the forex so that they can continue their business. And we see the dwindling resources of oil and gas in this country. The government has always said oil and gas is what moves this economy. If the government does not have that resource and those resources to gain foreign exchange for us, the whole country is suffering. In my state as the president of the CCIC, and I'm now not the president of the chamber anymore since a week ago, I said in every forum, unless we cannot empower our next generation, unless we cannot find people with ideas, innovative people, and help them to gain and to create new wealth for this country, we're going to lose a generation. Today we are going to hear from Dr. Hosein what the fortunes for the future of this country is. And we have to learn from that. We must understand that we as a people, as a parent, as a citizen that is concerned for the welfare of this nation, we need to do our part. We are hopeful, as David was saying, that the vaccine rollout continues at a rapid pace, because that is the only way we can start to get this economy back on its feet again. And with that said, I just want to introduce Dr. Hosein to you all. Dr. Hosein has been a good friend of the Shawarna's chamber. I know we invited him to several functions and he came and we were happy that he was there. Dr. Hosein was a high school dropout. And that's what I want you to understand. A high school dropout, but a man with a blessing, a man with a vision. He pursued O-levels and A-levels on his own, after which he came to UWE Senegal School. At UWE, he pursued a BSc in economics. Persistence and hard work paid off, and Dr. Hosein was awarded a scholarship to attend Cambridge University, where he obtained his PhD in economics with an emphasis on international trade theory. After graduating in 2000, he joined the Department of Economics at UWE and has become an active member of the department since then. He's responsible for undergraduate courses in maths and international trade, and for postgraduate courses in international trade theory. His research interest focuses heavily on international trade with emphasis on urban issues. We have heard a lot from Dr. Hosein on the media. We have read his thoughts and ideas, and I know the country looks forward to hearing from him, because he's a man full of wisdom and knowledge. And we are glad to have him here with us this afternoon on the FGBMI platform. And so with that, I want to welcome Dr. Hosein to share with us.
So, Trevor Wexbalan is not here, but he is a person that is very like to be. He was when I was a student, when I now started uni, he was someone I used to sell copybooks, and I used to go by Trevor. I think I met him before. I met him in Marvel. Trevor would call everybody he knew and ask them to buy. And that was the way I used to make money to go to school. So when he called me and asked me to do this, I was very delighted to do it. And so I am here. So good afternoon. A lot of what I am about to say, you would have obviously heard me speak about it before. I am allowed to take this off as I'm here, right? Yeah. Except for the addition of the World Economic Outlook that came out last week. Now, I think, I treat commenting on the national economy very seriously. I think there is the political truth, and I think there is the blunt truth. And I try to speak as best as I can to the blunt truth, to keep my people informed and educated as to the facts, to what I see in my honest, humble, genuine opinion as the truth, uncolored by any influence, certainly uncolored by any political influence. So when I look at the World Economic Outlook, I became even more concerned about the Trinidad and Tobago economy. And for those of you all who have heard me speak before, prior to COVID, I was very worried about the Trinidad and Tobago economy. And then came COVID, which made it even worse. And now I am looking at the World Economic Outlook, and I'm seeing some numbers there that really have me concerned. And it surprises me the slow pace at which we seem to take on reform, and the casual approach, in my judgment, to change in the context of the existing numbers. And I am probably going to spend the next 2 weeks speaking about some of these numbers in various places, because I think the population, certainly people like you all, need these type of numbers in order to make judgments. Much along the lines that Gavin mentioned when he stood up here and spoke a few minutes ago. So with that, I will go to the next slide. The next slide will show simply that what I'm going to do in terms of an assessment. Next slide. I don't mind standing up there. Okay, so this is the Trinidad and Tobago economy here. This is 1980, and I made 1980 the base time period for the three groups that I listed here. the Caribbean, the world, and Trinidad and Tobago. So, since 1980, if economic activity in the Caribbean as a whole was 100, by 2026 it is now forecasted to be 230.3, sorry, 251.5 by the IMF. Trinidad and Tobago at 230.3, and the world at 465.4. So when I graphed those numbers, when I looked at those numbers and I graphed it, I said, well, we are becoming relatively pauperized. And I have young kids, and I would never leave Trinidad. I would never leave my country. But I know that this type of information is important from a relative perspective to young people and to other groups of people. So I was surprised to see the gap that has emerged between our country and the rest of the world, and even emerging between our country and the Caribbean. And if you look carefully at the graph, you would see that in 2026, according to the IMF numbers, and I have great confidence in the IMF forecasting methodology. A lot of my colleagues who sat in class with me now do this type of econometric modeling for the IMF and communicate with them directly sometimes. And if you look at 2026, you will see it is less than 2008. Now again, that has me worried, so we are in a long period of economic stagnation. Too long. And if it is, you put someone on a bed and they remain on the bed for too long a period of time without mobility, they start to develop conditions related to a lack of mobility. In other words, investment could become affected, your economic cycle could become affected by a lack of mobility in the economy. It may make you make decisions of one particular kind as compared to decisions if you were in a vibrant, thriving economy. Next slide. Now, what I did then is I normalized all the numbers to 1980 being a base year, and I looked at lots of regions throughout the world. And Trinidad and Tobago is only two countries are behind Trinidad and Tobago in terms of only two groups are behind Trinidad and Tobago in terms of where they are expected to be in 2020, which is Eastern Europe and Western Europe. And again, that has me very concerned because some of these regions have a lot of problems. So, but when I look at all the other groups, Asian, Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, and so on and so forth, their progress it is so much ahead of ours that it leaves me a bit worried about my country. Next slide. Now, I am forced to speak to a graph of this nature on behalf of all young people in Trinidad and Tobago. Between 2007 and 2021, we produced 4.379 billion barrels of oil and gas equivalent. That's a lot of oil and gas equivalent. So if you produce that, Mr. Chairman, you would expect to see something substantive in return. When you go to your kids and say, because this is their oil and gas, when we go to them and we say we produce 4.379 billion of your oil and gas and we exported it and whatnot, we would expect to see, or they would expect to see, what they say, right? Mommy and daddy and my political leaders, they extracted our gas and oil, and so we would be in good stead. They would have put away a nice tiny sum from that extracted oil and gas to things easy. When it's time to go to university, we don't have to worry about funding. We don't have to worry about certain basic amenities because a significant amount of our oil and gas has been extracted, and therefore it will be stored somewhere because it is intergenerational resource, and all of us would be able to benefit from this move or this cumulative output. And then when you match that up against economic activity, you see that after producing this cumulative amount of oil and gas, you see that economic activity actually went backwards. And I find this painful. When I speak on these things, I speak not only as an economist, I speak with the knowledge of an economist, but as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. And it bothers me deeply because I see great amount of productive activity in one sphere that is very valuable. And at the same point in time, I see strategies adopted in some format that we now have an economy that is about 17% lower than in 2014 and about 13 to 14% lower than in 2007. So it leaves me concerned because I have a responsibility as well, even if it is a very small responsibility. I have 1 over 1.3 million responsibility to correct this. And it means that in the little way that I can help my country, I have failed. It means, because certainly this to me represents failure. And in the little way that I could educate and help my country, it means that I have failed. And when my kids come to me and the children at the university come to me, I will feel shame. I feel shame. I don't know what to say to them when they ask me, well, Dr. Hosein, so you are a knowledgeable economist, you understand things economics, how do you explain the extraction of our economic wealth and the state of our economy? And I get sad. Because I take these things seriously. I have no answer. Except that I would say I tried my honest best. You have to believe me to put the facts in the public domain. Go back and read the newspapers from 2007. I have been consistent, children. I have been abused by ministers continuously for speaking the truth. And I continue to speak the truth. But I don't know how to speak anything but the truth. Next slide. This is 2021 here. 2021, you see that our economic growth performance is expected to be 2.1%. I have great confidence in the IMF numbers, but the IMF numbers are based upon numbers that they receive for the natural gas sector and for the oil sector. Personally, because there is a 98% correlation between natural gas production and the level of economic activity, and I know that natural gas production in the last 4 months of 2020 and in the first 3 months of 2021 has been on the decline, I am going to suggest that this number may be a little larger than I think it would be. I could be wrong because it's expected numbers, but based on the evidence of the last 7 months, my understanding of the econometrics and about the mechanics of the way the economy works is that this 2.1 could possibly be low. Next slide. In 2022, some natural gas projects are expected to come on stream, and because there is a high correlation between natural gas production and economic activity is expected to go to 4.1%. And also, if you collapse 7.8%, I believe it was in 2020, and from 2015 to 2019, you basically had economic contraction. A sharp fall in business activity, Mr. Chan, when the economy resumes some normality, means that activity will go back to normal. So when you compare go back to normal with a sharp fall, you must get good. So that is in part a statistical number. I hope that makes sense. That 4.1%, we take it, we say thank you, don't get me wrong at all. But also note that as compared to many other economies in the Caribbean, it's the third lowest performance. Because if you make a big dip, the next step is when you reach the bottom of the barrel, well, obviously, the probability is that you will either stay there or you will move upwards. So we take the 4.1%, we say thank you. It's strongly linked to gas production, but I'm showing you the comparative position. Next slide. 2023 shows that we are forecasted to be one of the lower performances in the Caribbean again. And it is something that will be linked to the fact that after the natural gas comes on stream, what are the other dynamics that's called growth? Next slide. 2024, we go even lower than Suriname and we go to the second expected lowest performance of 1.5%. So it's something that we need to be concerned about. Next slide. No. So what I did is I went back to the IMF report. I don't actually read the report itself, I just over the report. I deal with the numbers, the Excel files, so I form my own intelligent opinion based upon the numbers. So what I'm saying to you here is not what the IMF is saying, it's how I interpret the numbers using good practice methodology. Now, in 2016, we were the 9th worst performing economy in the world. In 2017, the 12th worst performing economy in the world in terms of real GDP growth performance. In 2018, the 18th worst performing economy in the world. In 2019, the 15th, and so on. Now, I'm treating 2020, 2021, and 2022 as linked to COVID recalibration. So I'm not placing much emphasis on that because it's a shock that didn't take place for about 100 years and the economy will recalibrate. I'm looking at 2023, 24, 25, and 26, and those numbers will be. It means that after the shock has started to taper off, we are back to a pattern of economic growth that is, according to the IMF Excel tables, in the top 30 worst performing in the world. And it bothers me deeply. It bothers me deeply because I asked the question sometime in this format to my students. Is it absolutely necessary that you, at the start of the term, say to me that you are going to fail this course? In other words, at the start of the term, you have all opportunity to put in 15 hours a day, 7 days for the week, for the whole semester and pass the course. Is that correct? So at the start of the term, if you say you are going to fail this course, something is wrong. And in a similar light, I show that out here from 2021. For us to agree that 2023, 24, 25, and 26, we are going to accept that type of bad economic performance is not good. Because just like the student, instead of if you are planning to do 2 hours or 3 hours work per day on the coursework, to write the exam at the end of the term, you can simply do 12 and 13 and 14 and ensure you pass the course. Similarly, if these are the expected forecast, if these are the given forecasted numbers, change it, challenge them, make nonsense of the IMF numbers by intervening strategically in the economy and putting mechanisms in place to trigger growth. Does that make sense? In other words, if you see the IMF report predicting such a bleak medium-term period, is there anything we can do to stabilize our economy then starting now? Of course, and I will point to some of the things we can do next time. So we see on account of COVID, this is a graph that came from the World Economic Outlook, that some industries in the manufacturing sector suffer more than others. You would simply see that electronics recover quickly, not surprisingly, but motor vehicles and aerospace industry, not surprisingly, had a lot. Next slide. Now, when you play football, and I still try to play some old people football, if you get an injury on your ankle, it will heal, but it goes through a period of time. It will heal very slowly, and if you aggravate it, and not stretching sufficiently, you have to start. In economics, there's something called scarring, and not much people comment on this, but just when an economy goes through a long period and an
extensive period of recession. And I suspect we are more in a depression than a depression. I saw the 2019 growth numbers look like 0.1. I have to accept the CSO numbers, but from 2008 to 2020, we have definitely been in a period of stagnation. And some of the things that happen is that there is permanent damage to the economy supply potential. You may become discouraged to invest. You may say, and I listened carefully to what Gavin said earlier, you may have to change the type of investment you plan to make. You will have to change the structure of investment you make. And in a stagnant economy, you definitely have to invest in build up. You definitely, well, not me, my kids have dogs. And I find it so expensive to maintain these dogs. And I'm always calling about the dogs, but at the end of the day, I have to shut up and maintain the dogs. Big dogs, in the morning I have to get up and I have 15 minutes yard cleaning to do because of the dogs. But it's a factor of production almost. It's part of the business strategy to keep me alive in order to be able to generate ideas. So businesses will have to do build up and a range of interventions like that so they can maintain, they can stay alive and continue to run business. So it takes part of direct capital interjections to complementary capital injections. And what some people will do is they will invest sideways. They will invest in businesses where people cannot see what you invest in. So you may buy 2 houses somewhere else, rent it out, that the neighbors don't know you have invested. It won't be the kind of investment you want to make. It's weaker investment, but it keeps you alive. It keeps you out of a discussion group as becoming much more wealthy, and you still get an income. But that's not the kind of investment the country needs. And productivity could also be permanently affected by the loss of firms. From the time firms close down, James Tybalt in 1982 said it takes quickly firms exit businesses, but it takes almost 3 to 4 years to get back into business. So plenty of people, take for example Petrogen, the amount of technical know-how that we would have lost there from the engineers over time, it would take years to rebuild that. Next slide. No, this is not for you to really look, I will explain it. So I did a deep dive into the comparative advantage structure of comparative advantage refers to the areas in which you are strong. I compared 1999 with 2018, and for all these sectors that 3-digit sectors that we exported in, we lost comparative advantage strength in, if you look at the second to last column. Loss, gain, 1 gain. Loss, gain, loss, everything else is lost. We have been losing comparative advantage in many of our export sectors. That's a terrifying reality, and it's something that we have to work on. Next slide. Now, I don't want to spend too long on this again. And Gavin would know what I'm talking about. We sit down, each one of you all here, except probably 1 or 2 people, are just as responsible and perhaps even more responsible than myself for this graph here. We sat down and we watched, I can't remember seeing much of you all walking in front of Parliament with placards and quarreling, and we spent out all of the money, basically spent out all of the money that we collected in energy rents from 2000 to 2020. All is gone, in my view. We have some money in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, and the reason I say all is gone is although we have some money in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, and we have some money in the stock of reserves, we also have about $150 billion in debt. So if you were to take it out and counterbalance it, basically all the energy rents is gone. And it was spent on, if you look at the numbers, implicitly on one item, transfers and subsidy. And look at the trends in capital expenditure, this line here. The trends in capital expenditure shows, and this is how you widen an economy, and this is a business group here. If you have a business and it has reached full capacity as reflected in an unemployment rate of about 3.2%, then the next step, it means that if this bill, for example, you were here and all about the tables and was full of people and you want to bring more people, you have to widen space. So your capital expenditure is what shifts the supply curve rightwards. And as you can see there, our capital expenditure line has been relatively flat, and in fact, after a period of time has been gradually gently downward sloping. But the transfers and subsidy line has been very buoyant. The total debt outstanding measured on the right-hand side axis has been growing. And we have to be careful about that. Our debt to GDP ratio is now in the 80s. Next slide. And in order to grow, you must borrow. Our interest payments, though, have now, towards the end of the data period, started to supersede capital injections. And that's something to be concerned about, the magnitude of interest payments in relation to capital injection. And someone could be forgiven for saying, well, all of that interest payments, if we have done this thing correctly, could have been put into capital. Next slide. And this shows, so I have taken out the inflation rate, I've removed the inflation rate, real debt, real central government debt, so excluding contingent liabilities, has grown considerably. And at the same point in time, real GDP has declined. So we are a smaller economy with a bigger debt. And it points, therefore, that the debt was not used productively as it could have been. Because if you use it, there is no problem in borrowing it. If you borrow money and you grow your business so you can afford your debt, that's not a big issue. I'm showing you that my concern resides around the fact that we have increased debt and we have a smaller economy. And therefore, I am therefore very worried. Next slide. And we have an agony where debt per capita in US dollar terms is rising, whilst GDP per capita is falling. Debt per capita is rising, whilst GDP per capita is falling. Next slide. Now, we have a situation, and I've been spending most of the last year on this topic in terms of thinking space, where we have a decline in labor force. So our labor force has declined from 664,300 in March 2014 to 623,700 in March 2019, about 40,000. That's the reality. We have a decline in labor force on account of aging and one other factor that I will mention shortly. Next slide. And we have a situation where we have out of the labor, not in the labor force. So these people, it is not because of aging. They are not in the labor force for some other reasons. Now, people would say maybe they are joining back. I don't know. It is highly possible. I don't have the factual connectivity information. But the number of people not in the labor force has been growing in Trinidad and Tobago. And the less people you have in the labor force that should be in the labor force, it means the more responsibility of those of you who remain in the labor force. Does that make sense? So we are seeing a situation like that. Next slide. And we are seeing in manufacturing, for example, the employment, number of people employed moved from 60,300 to 45,800 in the listed time period. That's a considerable volume of people that is no longer in the manufacturing sector. In fact, if you look at something called manufacturing capacity utilization, you will see that there is a significant amount of unused capacity. And part of the reason is many times manufacturing couldn't get workers because for some reason, in the period when the economy experienced rapid growth from 2002 to 2014, we somehow find it necessary to run a state-led program pulling people out of private sector employment into cutting grass and all other type of employment activity. Next slide. And one of the attributes, it's not a problem, it's an attribute of the Trinidad and Tobago economy is that the employment of people with primary school education decreased considerably. So we no longer have a big labor force of people with only primary school education, what we will call unskilled workers. Our pool of unskilled workers decreased considerably. But in many businesses, you need unskilled workers. You can't afford to pay the salary of skilled workers and semi-skilled workers for menial jobs. And therefore, we have a paucity because of the growth in the economy in unskilled workers and because of the educational interventions in the economy, the pool of unskilled workers fell. So my argument is that there is a role, a potential role for the Venezuelan workers here. I don't know if, my view is that the re-registration process of the Venezuelan workers should have been a registration process again. So that we register and we document all the Venezuelan workers here for two reasons. One, we want to make sure that we know who are the Venezuelan workers here and their skill stock. Because when we know their skill stock, we can develop formulations to marry their skill stock with productive interventions in the economy. And the second thing we need to understand is mechanical capital dilution. If you have a capital stock here, and you have this amount of Venezuelan, and you keep increasing the size of the denominator, then the ratio of the numerator to the denominator will keep falling. And that's a problem. So you need to know what is that ratio given the denominator, so you could optimally intervene and say, well, here we're going on, we can't take any more Venezuelans, you know. This thing reaches a capital ratio of K over N star, and therefore we now need to stop this process. So we will probably need to tell the police to intervene or national security to intervene. The challenge is we don't know what is the ratio because we don't know what is the denominator. And so my view is that we need to know what is the denominator in terms of the total number of Venezuelans here and their skill stock, because at some point in time we have to make a judgment as to the carrying capacity of the production function that is Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the optimal capital to labor ratio. I hope that makes sense. Next slide. Now, what I did here, and again, this is just for me to speak though, is I tried to design the most scientific way to take this economy forward. I don't like to speak to things that I can't defend academically or scientifically. So the economy in March 2020 was on the point A. And then came COVID, and obviously, Mr. Chan, if you have COVID, then if you tell some of your workers to stay home and whatnot, you will produce less. That's a fact. So the economy would have moved from a productive capability of A to a productive capability of B. Fine. That clear to everyone so far? At the point B, January, May, April, June, July, August, September came, and we started to gradually open the economy. We have an economic recovery team, and we need a block of ideas to take the economy forward. So there are three permutations. One, the first permutation is you go back to it. The first option, Gavin, is you go back to where you were before the economy closed up. Is that? So we are making that the first permutation. So the question is, do you like the first permutation? Now, in the context of COVID, the first permutation you would have to say is very good. if you could go back to see a movie and you could go back to eating lunch and dinner in passage of Asia, and so on, everybody would be happy. And if all the restrictions associated with COVID, we could somehow get rid of, then you would readily realize that pre-COVID, things weren't as bad as we thought. It got even worse, so we would go back to pre-COVID easily. In other words, we would go back to a point such as here. Another option is to go to a point such as C, where we produce more non-tradable goods. Now, this is my great concern with the Venezuelans. If it is, my argument or my guesstimate, and I don't like the guess, but I'm using the UNHCR number for about 40,000. And in time I read that with some of the newspaper reports I see with landings of Venezuelans and whatnot, and some of the comments of other people, and I'm assuming that the stock of Venezuelans here is closer to 60,000, of which 16,525 is registered, so about 45,000 approximately is unregistered. Where would an unregistered Venezuelan worker go? On the top of your head, if you are unregistered immigrant, would you go where the officials can see you? So you would go in the informal, non-tradable sector. So if you go to the bars, I can only speak to the places I see in Casperlo. You pass by the bars, you see a pretty Venezuelan girls standing up outside and looking for customers to come in and work. That's exactly the place. That's my great concern. My great concern is that the informal, non-tradable sector, which is point C, is exactly where we don't want the undocumented workers to go, because the informal, non-tradable sector has a drag on the current account balance on foreign exchange rules. So if you sell more Johnny Walker and more Johnny Red and Blue, I don't take alcohol or whatever it is you sell in the bars, you need to get foreign exchange to permit it. And when these undocumented Venezuelans and other Venezuelans receive an income, they go to PriceMart and other places and they buy up things and they send back home, some of which will be foreign exchange. So implicitly, an undocumented lot of Venezuelans has an impact on the foreign exchange, in my view, working through the conduit of growth in the informal, non-tradable sector. So that's the second place. The third place is a point such as D. And I am of the view that if we plan well enough, at some point in time we will all get the vaccine. At some point in the world, if you look at England has started to arrest the spread of COVID-19. At some point in time, if we move strategically, quickly and strategically wise enough, we will get the vaccine and the economy will return to a semblance of normality. What do we want ultimately? We want an economy producing more exportable goods. The aspect of exportable goods in which we have greater control over is not the energy sector, that is more under the control of the multinational companies. It's more the non-moving exportable goods. So all the manufacturers and exporting scorpion pepper sauce and all the other things that we can produce, that is not energy. That is not energy. And I am of the view that we should look at the Venezuelan workers. We have a humanitarian responsibility to them here. I am in no way objecting to that. In fact, I'm supporting it. The people are already here. We need to find a way to make life good. But is there a formula that we can look at that facilitates humanitarian support and at the same time moves them out of the non-tradable, informal, non-tradable part of the economy into the formal, non-moving, tradable, exportable part of the economy? And that's where I spend a lot of my time thinking. And my view is that now you could also include import substitution in that, because that also saves foreign exchange. In other words, if we are importing some cassava with the piece in the middle, people want, I think they call it DV, and you buy it in massive stores and in bags or whatever, if we could produce some of that cassava via Venezuelan labor. If we buy Baji from abroad or arrows from abroad, and we could use immigrant labor to produce more of that, foreign exchange will be saved. So my view is there scope for sectoral labor market intervention? Can we use the Venezuelan labor, just as we do with African in Canada, in a strategic way to increase the production of import substitutable goods or other type of exportable goods that either generates foreign exchange or saves on the use of foreign exchange? Because in my opinion, every conversation in this country hereafter must be linked to foreign exchange. That's the real crunch, and we have seen that those of us who follow this thing know that the stock of reserves, it has been falling since 2014. Next slide, next, next one. Next one. So, what do we do? I mean, after all this, what do we do? Well, I don't know if I am playing cricket, what would be the type of ball to use a cricket as an example? I wouldn't know the rhythm and the quality of delivery that Delmagra will serve up to me if I'm facing. But there are some basic steps that are under my control in facing Delmagra, or top quality bowler, and that is I must keep my eye on the ball for the time it leaves the hand. I must keep my eye on that ball. Those are endogenous things that are under my control. Delmagra has no influence on that. Similarly, there are three variables that I think we have some control over in terms of influencing policy outcomes in Trinidad and Tobago. The first is the labor force participation rate. And I was really surprised when I checked the data 2 nights ago, and I saw it was at 56.7. And this is June 2019 data, not COVID data yet, which will probably bring it down to 50. And in Bahamas, for example, the labor force participation rate is 72. Now, if it is you calculate output per worker, let's say that's X, and only a small fraction of your workforce is working, then immediately, for the fraction of your labor force that is not working, you lose all the output per worker from that fraction of the labor force. Does that make sense? So if you can increase the fraction of your labor force that is working, then each new worker you get to work times the output per worker expands national activity. And so this line here, that is the lowest it was, and I can go back to 1991 and I can tell you it is the lowest it was since 1991. We have endogenous policy control over that. So step number one, I will immediately commission, and the university will be willing to do it. I will immediately commission a detailed study on why is the labor force participation rate in Trinidad and Tobago declining, and what could be done to reverse it in the shortest time period. Something has gone on. Why are people pulling out of the labor force? The second thing is the ease of doing business ranking, and the higher this line goes upwards is the worse. This line should have stopped here then, so at 105 in 2019. So it moved from about 63 to 105 in 2019, which is bad. So I asked the question. We are all permanent secretaries, ministers, sitting in government and supporting government. The ease of doing business in our country is directly influenced by obstacles in our country that me and you can influence relevantly. Set up a dummy variable, set up a dummy experiment, start a firm, and walk the firm through from beginning to opening. And look at all the obstacles that this firm meets in the process in terms of getting electricity, getting water, getting access to credit, getting taxes paid and whatnot. And then, within 3 months period, have a team of your highest most qualified public servants address this and move our ease of doing business ranking from 105 down to about 4. In business, people were facilitated more in terms of the ease of doing business. Then you all will invest. It is so difficult to invest. And we need more than anything else investment in the non-energy export sector. Every single conversation, how are you, good morning, what are you doing for the non-energy export sector? How are you today? What did you do for the non-energy export sector? That's how important I see the non-energy export sector now. And we need to be pushing it. And for it to move upwards under our watch when we sit here is not good. It's not a good testimony. This is a Christian gathering, it's not a good testimony. It means, and I would like the media not to quote this part, it means that the talent of gold that we were given by God, we did not use it properly. And I'm sure you all know what I'm referring to. I'm asking the media not to quote this because I don't want another year just go with the country saying that I spoke about Alpha and talk about Beta. Can we speak about that now? We didn't use the talent of gold properly. And you know what he does when you don't use the talent of gold properly. And the third variable, which is the most important variable, is the real effective exchange rate. The real effective exchange rate is a trade-weighted, inflation-moderated nominal exchange rate. We have control over several parts of that variable, the trade rates, but the trade rates is largely influenced by energy, who we trade with in a big way, and certain commodities go to certain countries. One of the things I give Minister Steinberg a great deal of credit for is he tried to hold the inflation-moderated part of the real effective exchange rate by bringing the domestic inflation rate down. But the challenge with that is other countries did the same and their inflation rate fell more than ours, and therefore, relatively speaking, our relative inflation rate was high. In other words, if our inflation rate dropped from A to B, and our trading partners' inflation rate dropped from C to D, but the drop in C to D was more than the drop from A to B, then overall our relative inflation rate goes. And that's the danger of focusing on an internal devaluation, which is what this country tried. We tried an internal devaluation. So the next step is probably an external devaluation, a direct devaluation of the currency. And prior to the Venezuelans coming in, I would have stood on platforms like this across the country and said devalue the currency. But 60,000 Venezuelans here also represent an implicit devaluation potential to me. Because the objective of a devaluation is to make your country's export cheaper. That's an important objective. And if you use cheap Venezuelan labor to produce more banana and more scorpion pepper and more manufacturing goods, then the price per unit would fall and you will benefit from some aspects of the devaluation by virtue of a sensible strategic labor market policy. And you still keep the 6.79, I believe, nominal exchange rate, so that your medicine and your other capital imports don't go up in value unnecessarily. No, that does not rule out the need for devaluation. I'm saying that we implicitly have the means at our disposal to obtain similar targets. The other thing is that if we were to consider going into a devaluation, we will need to do some sound homework. We will need to look at scientifically what are the commodities we can import substitute. Don't guess it. Don't guess it. This is not something you leave up to guesswork. You scientifically inquire after it. And so these three policy interventions, and certainly if we were to fix these three policy interventions, in my judgment, we would go a long, long way towards restoring economic growth in Trinidad and Tobago, but not just growth, not just economic growth, restoring growth that does not compromise the stock of foreign exchange. And that's where I think policy makers need to sit down. And I don't know, when I look at the first 3 to 5 slides that we started off this presentation with, I think we are close to the end of the road if we are not there already. And basically, the time has come now to call a meeting in a small room, a smaller room than that is. Put the relevant policymakers on the COVID-19 conditions in a small room that they cannot move around too much and force policy change. So sit down here and we sort this thing out. And it worries me. It worries me that it is not being done. It worries me because this is a long period of time. The decay is not immediate. I get very discouraged when I hear people talk, and that's why I say I'm coming to tell you what the numbers say as honestly as I could. I cannot deal in the political interpretation of numbers. This is a long period of time in which each one of you all here had an influence on guiding policy decisions in one form or the other, and a fair say in improving Trinidad. Most of these things here occurred before 2020. In fact, the data stops at 2020. So we need to know in the various ways that we can speak up. We need to say to our MPs and our ministers and the people who can implement the change that we need to implement the change. And they may come at you one-on-one. You may become unpopular. They may say things about you. But as long as you speak the truth, without regard to whether or not it is the political truth, you will be doing the right thing in my job. And I stop here. It's unfortunate. I would have liked to, echo sentiments of hope. And if I were to try to go down that route, I would say that the real power for change lies in the hands of each one of you all here. The media has a tremendous role to play, and I'm very disappointed in the media in terms of the quality of some of their reporting. And they avoid you when you become very detailed sometimes, in my judgment. And the media has to take, and I see Curtis Williams is my good friend, I see Curtis taking on hardcore avenues for change. The media has a role to play in bringing the truth to the people, the uncolored truth. The university, and I speak here in my individual capacity, not as the university. The university and technocrats at the university have a responsibility for educating the population. The civil society, groups like this, you all have a responsibility, Mr. Chairman, to host seminars like this throughout the length and breadth of your constituency that you influence, and educate the masses and let the masses call for change. Because at the end of the day, unless we do that, the stock of exchange is going to continue to decline, the import cover ratio is going to continue to fall, the debt per capita is going to continue to rise, per capita GDP is going to continue to fall, and most importantly, we will not generate the foreign exchange that we need to buy our medicine and our capital goods to keep this economy afloat. So thank you very much for your time. I'm sorry I couldn't say brighter things, but I hope by saying the honest things that it was still of value. Thank you. I will take 3 questions.
Excellent presentation, Dr. Hosein. My name is Oren Gordon. I'm a media consultant. I'm no longer in the media, although if I can do a shameless bit of guerrilla marketing, I write a column in the Tuesday Express, which I invite everybody to read. Something concerning precision. You mentioned in the earlier part of your presentation the worst performing economies in the world.
I respect your scholarship and your erudition, but I do wonder at the precision of the term. Because if Trinidad and Tobago starts here, and there's a modest graphical increase, and Sierra Leone starts here, and there is a more, there is a steeper increase, can you argue that, can you argue still based on the gradient of the hill, of the increased hill, can you still argue that Trinidad and Tobago is a worse performing economy than Sierra Leone? Shouldn't we be employing more specific terms, more accurate terms than worse performing? That seems to me to be kind of a value judgment term rather than one of precision. And a question for Gavin.